Someone who is ready for this, I would just recommend that they put the pressure off of themselves, put that aside, and just start reading. Start trying to figure out what any of it even means without tying any emotion to like having to do this now, or if I don't, this is going to happen. Just read about these communities of health, and whether it be plant-based or paleo or whatever, just trying to get an underlying idea of what they're even about. And then if that connects with you, you might realize like, oh, I can have red meat. I thought I couldn't. I thought it was bad for me. That was a really big stress that I had. Let's get that out of the way. Maybe I'm more likely to go down this ancestral health path because Jim told me that I couldn't do this, this, and this, but he didn't even know.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who is out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. I'm Bob Nickman. My guest today is Silas Johnson, who you heard at the beginning of the show. Silas is a health coach, a primal health coach. If you want to find out more about that, keep listening. And he's also a Crossfit Level 1 trainer. Stay tuned for that. First of all, before we get to that, I want to invite you to visit my website, theexplodinghuman.com. That is where you can see photos of all my guests, synopses of the episodes, listen to the episodes, little bio on myself, and there's a donate button if you'd like to support the show. That would be awesome. Also, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. That, of course, is free. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Add the with Bob Nickman so you can find that on YouTube. And if you're, cruising around on the computer and you want to listen to an episode, that's a great way to do it. I also have a sponsor, the Hero Soap Company. That's Hero. And they make very healthy soaps infused with essential oils. They are absolutely great, and they last a really long time. That's surprised me. And they're so fresh smelling, you feel like you could actually eat this soap. So anyway, I've been using that. And that company donates a portion of their profits to helping homeless veterans. So it's a good cause and a great product. Now, when you go to checkout, if you type in the word exploding, you will get a discount. That is herosoapcompany.com. So as I was saying, my guest today is Silas Johnson. Silas has a really interesting story. He moved to Hawaii when he was a young man and became a carpenter. And through that, he had an opportunity to travel, among other places, to Africa. And there he saw the effects of the standard American diet on the populations of the countries that he visited there. And he saw how the effects were so negative and so detrimental to the health of these people there that he realized that there was an important thing that needed to be done in terms of educating people on different ways of eating than what we've been programmed to do, which is a lot of fats and junk food and sugar. Also, during that time, he became a CrossFit trainer, so he knows a lot about the physical exercise portion of health, and he's combined the two to become a coach. And he has a website called Healthy Tradesman, which you can visit, and you can get consulting from Silas. I got a little free consulting during the podcast, which I really enjoyed. So, we talked about a lot of different things, what primal health is and how our ancestors ate, some weight loss management and the Paleo Diet. Very interesting stuff, all stuff I didn't know about. And we talked about strength training and the importance of sleep. Big thing, sleep. Primal movement, and gut health. Silas is a font of knowledge and a great guy, really fun to talk to. So please listen in. This is Silas Johnson. You coach people on changing their lifestyles and their diets. Tell me where you got started with this, and maybe even before that. Were you somebody that had issues with your health that led you to this, or did you come from a family that does this? I'm always curious. How did you get here?
Had a minor condition called GERD, which is gastroesophageal reflux disease, and it created some ulcers that I had when I was about 17, and it could have been due to the fact that I smoked when I was a kid. I used marijuana excessively and probably drank and partied too much, and that was a reaction, I believe, to also the poor diet I had at the time. I was pretty independent younger kid. I ate meals at home, but I was always working. I always had a job. I could eat whatever I want, fast food, all that kind of stuff. I wasn't obese or overweight or anything, and I did participate in sports, so I felt relatively healthy. But that occurred earlier in my life, and I guess that would kind of create my path later. I come from a family where everyone's pretty healthy. We do have some autoimmune conditions, which became interesting to talk and think about later. I have an uncle with MS, a cousin with MS, and an aunt with like Crohn's disease, and my mom has been diagnosed with like fibromyalgia. But considering the statistics, those aren't even rare things anymore in our 21st century. So
yes,
yeah, that kind of brought me down that path. But I moved to Hawaii when I was 18, and right after high school, and I didn't know anything about anything. It kind of created who I was, because I just got thrown to the wolves, and I had to cook 100% completely on my own, take care of myself, which was great. But through influences I had met in Hawaii as a young man, I met people that were vegan, vegetarian, and Hawaii is a pretty crunchy hippie place, so there's a lot of that influence there.
Sure.
So I experimented with stuff like that in my early 20s. I had at least an 8-month stint of being vegetarian because my roommate was vegetarian, and that was cool. I felt good. I went from basically ramen noodles and canned soup to vegetarianism, which would create a health difference in anyone, no matter what your age. And then as I started to read more about it, I experimented with like raw veganism for probably only 2 months, because that was really difficult for me to keep up with, and because I didn't feel great. I did some fasting. I would do like 5-day long juice fasts, and I did all of those things when I was younger, just kind of playing around. I was lucky. Maybe we can talk about it later, what kind of detrimental effects those things may have on your body. But I was young, so I didn't feel good or bad or anything. They were just interesting and fun things to kind of go through and learn about. I didn't really take anything seriously until around 2010, when I was a carpenter, and the company I was working for took us to Africa, to Mozambique. I worked there for 9 months on a job, just a weird random occurrence. I was working for a large construction company, and we started bidding work internationally. And I was there in Africa, and a bunch of things happened. We couldn't really go anywhere, but we had the internet. And I was looking around me at food that they were all eating, the local population was eating. And I just started to my brain started clicking, because they were in such poor health, and I had all this time to research stuff. And I was thinking about ancestral diets for some strange reason, and I came across the Paleo Diet, which was kind of relatively new at that time. It had been around for a while, but people weren't talking about it as much as they had been in the last 5 or 6 years. And that was just the rabbit hole I went down. I started learning about, things that may cause issues like lectins, phytates, and oxalates that are, heavily saturated in a lot of our grain-based foods, and like where the origin of diet came from and what we looked like pre-agriculturally. And, looking at the local Mozambican population, just eating, bags of chips, sugary soda, and piles of rice with every meal, because it was the most affordable, and then seeing what kind of health condition that they had from that. And that's what opened me up to thinking the way that I think today.
Wow. I would not even guess that population would be eating that way. Is that the influence of America sending crap over there and it's cheap, so they're buying it?
Absolutely. I mean,
it's
rampant throughout all of Africa. I've spent time in Angola, in South Africa, specifically Mozambique, and even Swaziland. And it's just like they have their cheap little baracas, like these, their shops. And it's all it is crackers, chips, cookies, and junk food. And, it's 20 to 30 cents US. And that's what they're grabbing on the go because it's really affordable. And it's a treat because their main meals, at least the carpenters that I worked with, consisted of like a couple sardines and a big pile of rice every single day. So they're just high carb diets, processed food and sugar, and that was it. It was really hard to see. But
I had no idea that type of eating was so global. I'm very upset about that right now. I'm
it's
laughing, but
really
I'm not laughing. It's just,
right.
I had no idea. I make these assumptions about, less evolved technical cultures eating more off the land. And maybe in the rural areas, that's the case. I don't know.
I mean, possibly, but like I've went to very rural, like a place that I lived for a few years in a little bit further up the coast in Mozambique was like a fishing village, and you could drive 6 hours in any direction, and that same little shop was there with the exact same items, and the sugary drinks, and it's everywhere. I mean, if you're deep in the bush and they're mostly hunting or fishing or gathering, there's going to be holdouts, but anywhere that westernization has touched even a little bit, it's just full of junk food for sure.
Wow, it's almost like it's a global food virus that's just like infecting the entire planet with junk. I look at that stuff and I don't eat any of it, but I look at it and it's just, I see it as poison for
Absolutely.
me, particularly sugar. That sugar kicked my ass, I have to say. Personally, I experimented a lot with sugar over the years, and it finally got to the point where I'm like this sort of it made me grind my teeth at night. It affected my digestion, mood swings, and lots of like a big up when you eat it and then a big crash an hour later, and not being able to stop, the addictive quality of it. It's really kind of like cocaine.
It's biology. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of Rob Wolf. He's big in the whole ancestral health scene, but he wrote a book called Wired to Eat. And he goes so deep into this whole idea that we are biologically programmed to search out those extremely high sugar, starchy foods because those meant safety. Like if you could find that tree that was ready at that time, you sat under it and you ate and ate and ate until you could barely stomach it anymore. And then you did it again because you knew that there was a possibility of famine coming, or you knew that winter was coming and these foods wouldn't be available anymore. So cheap sugars, like that right there is literally cocaine for your brain, for your body, for your physiology. It's wired into us,
It's probably as addictive, if not more.
Yeah.
I would imagine. I guess the beauty of being able to sell that stuff is it's cheap, so you don't have to have a high income to score. So you got into paleo, and that was, explain what that is briefly. I think a lot of people know what it is, but it's some people don't. No,
absolutely. So diet dogma bothers me a lot. Anyway, I hate giving titles to things.
Yeah, I know it can be misleading, and people make these assumptions as soon as they hear a label, but you'll do your best. I know you
absolutely will. Yeah, they become inflammatory statements for sure. But a paleo diet there's this whole movement called the ancestral health, and it's wrapped around kind of paleo, which is a term, primal, keto, carnivore-ish. People kind of fall into that camp. But what they're basically saying is cut out the foods of modernity in the best way possible. So paleo diets get a bad rap because it's like, well, you didn't have, tomatoes 7,000 years ago, or, picture any food, like all the foods we're eating today, their progenitors look nothing like they are now. Like the foods that they came from were completely different back then. So it's impossible to recreate a true Paleolithic diet. But the goal with the paleo movement and all of its offshoots is to try and eat as close as possible as we did pre-agriculturally. Like no processed grains, no grains in general is kind of one of the tenets. no processed sugar, and no seed oils. Those are the three things, especially for my clients. If you just literally did that, you could live an extremely healthy life if you stuck to those. But that's where paleo comes from. Mark Sisson, another person who writes in this world, created a primal version, which does include dairy, and that's kind of based on human genetics too. If you're of Northern European descent, or even some African cultures, a lot of people still can digest lactose, but that's where that came from. But basically, yeah, the tenets are no cereal grains, no processed sugar, and no seed oils. And it's really as simple as that.
One of the issues with a type of diet with a label like that is the dogmatic and rigid rule-based thinking that people get really bent out of shape. I'm doing it right, you're not.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
And that never has worked for me in anything I've done. It's like, well, 80% of it works, but I'm not doing the other 20 because I don't like it. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't, I think that if you try something, use your intuition and use your body as a barometer to test if something is right for you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I eat a lot of stuff my wife can't eat. It just doesn't work for her, and vice versa. So is she right and I'm wrong, or am I right? No, it's just we're different.
Right. Yeah. And that's another, that's a weird paradox too. It's like everybody is different, which is very true. A lot of us have different levels of leaky gut based on other issues, autoimmune disease, cultural background. Those all are factors in what we probably should or shouldn't eat. But that's why I also like the ideas of ancestral health, because no one is required to eat grains, for instance. No one is required to eat canola or vegetable oil. Like every human on the planet, in my opinion, my unprofessional opinion, I guess, would be that anyone can benefit from making these small dietary changes. You won't suffer because you're not eating 6 to 11 servings of bread and oats a day. If you replace that with fruits and vegetables, you're going to be fine.
When you were talking about you being a teenager, that's exactly how I was, the way what you're talking. I didn't smoke cigarettes, but I did everything else you're talking about. And I went to, McDonald's, and it was fun. I didn't think about for 1 second any kind of consequences. And I remember sitting with some friends of mine in my early 20s, and I was making fun of some woman that had cellulite. And one of the women there goes, "You have it." And I go, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "I'm looking at your stomach. You've got the," and I look down and I go, "Oh, I do. I had cellulite in my early 20s because I was pounding down the McDonald's." And it was, it freaked me out. I was like, I can't wind up like that. That's other people, not me. And that was astonishing to me that's how young I was when I noticed that stuff.
Cellulite is a biomarker for sure. And a lot of evidence would suggest that cellulite, that the way that fat kind of forms itself is due to oxidized fat. And a lot of that oxidized fat comes from the seed oils, the vegetable oil, the canola, the soy. Your body literally takes that molecule in as if it were dietary fat, which is required, and it'll use that as a building block, or it'll get stored as fat in that broken oxidized state. So a lot of cellulite supposedly can come from just diets heavy in vegetable oils.
Well, whatever I was eating was a wreck. I have a picture of me at age 31, and I look worse then than I do now at age 66.
Wow. Good for you, though, man.
I mean, bloated and lots of, saggy face and big stomach and pale and not vibrant.
Right. So
that's
what have you done? What are you doing these days to kind of help improve that?
Well, I try to eat a lot of fruit and vegetables mostly. I do eat some protein based thing. I don't eat red meat because I just don't really like it. I've never liked it. Even as a kid, it bothered me.
Right.
I don't really do dairy. I don't do any sugar. But I do eat chicken and fish, and it works for me. I don't know why. It just feels, I'm not, I don't know what my body fat is. I don't measure any of that stuff. I just kind of go by what feels good. Could I improve what I'm doing? Absolutely. I think we all can do that. I also, I'm not too rigid, but I know the stuff that doesn't work. What I try to do is focus on when I eat something, how do I feel, and really pay attention to what my body does. Like it used to be, I used to say, if I want to go to sleep, eat a big bowl of pasta, and I would just crash an hour later, middle of the day.
Biology.
Yeah. I'm like, this spaghetti is fantastic. And then you're snoring, 25 minutes later and you can't walk.
Yeah, that's all insulin.
So,
right
I haven't studied it to the level that you have, but I just kind of go with, if it grows in the ground, it's probably okay.
Those simple things, people don't even realize the damage that they're doing just from these simple dietary choices. I mean, everything health related relates to diet somehow. It's how we literally build and grow and move and use our bodies. It's all about what we put in it.
And the thing that I found is that it affected, poor diet affected not just how I looked and physically felt, but my mental mood and my clarity in my brain. The fogginess that some foods create in the brain, and then you get a little depressed and you're kind of sluggish, and it's really, it's a whole, I guess, the holistic kind of a thing where one thing affects the other, and you really don't have vibrancy in your life if you're eating crap.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's kind of where I kind of, so when I started health coaching, I was a CrossFit trainer. I've been doing that for about 4 years, and that's one of my certifications. And in that certification, they do go over nutrition, and they kind of use that ancestral health template. And that was, that was it. Like, now I was ready to really attack the whole community and try and get everyone, I don't know if you're familiar with the whole CrossFit methodologies. It gets a really bad rap too, just like Paleo Diet.
No, I don't. I've been to one place. They were doing ice baths there, so that's why I went there. And it's one of my podcasts is me talking about the experience of doing the ice bath with the woman that was doing it. So she does this at the back of this. It's called Deuce Gym in Venice, California.
Cool.
And, that's a CrossFit place, but I never really, they had some sort of odd kind of things like giant tires people were pulling around. So I didn't really understand it, but everybody looked like they were having a great time and they were in great shape. So
right. Yeah. I mean, for people who are familiar or semi-familiar with CrossFit, it's general physical preparedness, period. And the way CrossFit works is you get certified and you can open a gym based on your certification, and that's it. CrossFit doesn't tell you what to do. But the most of the world has decided upon this kind of way that CrossFit's supposed to look, and it can be extremely beneficial. When people hear CrossFit, they're like, oh, I'll get hurt, or only young people do that. Like, every gym that I've ever worked at, it's all moms and dads and aunts and uncles. And like, the majority of our population at our gyms are people that just want help. And there's good coaching and bad coaching. But once that kind of started, then I really wanted to start health coaching, because there were some people that would just come to the gym every single day and just work their faces off and see no results in the gym. And that goes with any gym. And the reason is because your body composition is 80% diet, period. Like, there's no discussion about that. Like, you cannot, the moniker, you can't outwork a bad diet. Like, it's really real. Like, if you're not focusing on proper nutrition and feeding yourself the right way, that needle will never move. You might get a little bit stronger, but you're not going to lose weight. You're not going to feel better. You're going to probably feel worse because you're not recovering properly. So that's what really started me down the path. And then being a carpenter, that's how I kind of niched down. My previous few years, I'd been focusing on the communities and the gyms I was working on, but only this last year, I was like, just a light bulb went off. I'm like, hey, these people are completely underserved. This niche is like so unhealthy. I'm working with these guys every day, and lunch is a microwave burrito and a Monster Energy drink, and snacks in between is Copenhagen long cut chewing tobacco, like all day long. Like, and these guys are not healthy. They're not in good shape, and their bodies are falling apart by the time they're 50. Being in the trades, we have an incredible opportunity to be literally athletes. Like in no other job do you wake up every day and use your body all day to that level. Mm-hmm. And if you're fueling and feeding yourself properly, you should be an athlete. Like, they should all be walking around, 6-pack abs, ripped, strong, men and women, in good health, good metabolic health, proper body composition and body weight. There's literally no excuse for it, other than the fact that whatever goes along with this community is usually this whole idea that whatever, doesn't matter what I eat.
I always wondered about that, guys that work really hard physically, but they got a big gut, and they smoke, and they're drinking beer and eating junk, and you're like, man, you're in terrible shape for somebody that goes up and down a ladder 30 times a day.
Yeah.
Yep. That's an interesting thing. So you started coaching. How did you just have somebody you decided to help, and then from there it went to other things? And how does, tell me, like, let's say I come to you, I'm 35 pounds overweight, I'm eating terrible. I go, Silas, you got to help me. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. How would you start?
Your first question. I got a health coaching certification, and even my own spider senses go off when I say that out loud, because there are so many different organizations that create these certifications that as of now, the one I have currently has now had some sort of accreditation applied to it, which is good. But anyone can make some sort of health coaching certification. There's so many multi-level marketing companies that certify you as a health coach so you can sell their garbage drinks and whatever. But I went through Primal Health Coach Institute, which is Mark Sisson. He's like the godfather of ancestral health. And he, it's a year-long course, and it's cell biology, evolutionary biology, nutrition, movement. Like, we go really deep, go super far in depth. And after, so CrossFit first, and then I got that. And that's kind of what made me confident enough to start coaching people. So that's what I kind of started a business around that. And that's, the first clients were one-on-one clients. And then I built a group coaching platform for the CrossFit gyms, and I put 100 people through that, which was great. And then I've kind of scaled that back just because we've been so busy in our lives lately, and we moved. But anyway, that's a different story. Right now, I'm just doing one-on-one coaching. And what that would look like is, you call me, we have, a 30-minute to an hour conversation about what health looks like to you, how I can help you, what your goals might be. And then if we become a good fit, then it's a 12-week kind of program. And I'm literally going to hold your hand through these 12 weeks and show you how to literally change your whole lifestyle. And, the first couple of weeks are just getting you to cut out the junk. That's it. Empty that cabinet, get rid of all the stuff that could be, keeping you on that path in your kitchen, your fridge, getting rid of the sugar, the seed oil, and the grains. And we just kind of stay there for a couple of weeks, and we talk about what that looks like and how to kind of do things differently, and recipes and stuff. And then as it goes on, like weeks 2 and 3, we kind of go more in depth about this term called metabolic flexibility. Like, I'm going to give you some biology and help you understand how your body partitions fuel sources, how you burn fat better, how you burn sugar, like what your body actually does with all these foods that you eat. So those are the next few weeks. And then in the middle, we kind of go through a whole thing about stress and sleep, because stress and sleep is huge, 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 huge. After you kind of have your diet sorted out, stress and sleep becomes kind of the center of that, because if your diet's great, you're working out plenty, but you're stressing constantly and you're not sleeping well, again, the needle will not move. So in the middle, we deal with stress and sleep. I take you through some meditation techniques, figure out how to get your sleep dialed in, wearing blue light blocking glasses in the evening to block out that blue light, shutting the devices off early, getting in cold, dark rooms, those kinds of hacks and tricks to kind of work on that aspect. And then as we go on through the 12 weeks, by the time you hit the like six or 7 week mark, we go a little bit deeper, and I add some tools to that. I call them tools. They are things like intermittent fasting and ketosis, right? These are super powerful tools for affecting that metabolic flexibility. So once you've hit that 6 or 7 week mark and you've cut out the sugar and the grains and the seed oils, your body is way better at burning fuel and telling you what it should or shouldn't have, because you've gotten rid of all the head trash based around your addiction to sugar. And then we can ease you into these tools. Intermittent fasting, for instance, obviously, I mean, maybe if you haven't heard about it, it's taking a time period out of your day to just not eat. And that's when all the kind of fun things happen. If you're constantly feeding yourself, your body's not taking the time to repair cells and creating that metabolic flexibility, allowing you to not feel hungry all the time. You're kind of training your body to live in that ancestral pathway where we didn't really have food every waking hour of the day. So we'll do some intermittent fasting, and then if you're feeling ready, we'll dive into ketosis. And even ketogenic diets get a really bad rap. They've become this fad thing, and they are a biological state that we've gone in and out of for the last 2 million years. Everyone should spend a little bit of time in a ketogenic state every year at least, because that's just how things work. Even in a tropical region, there was a time period where fruit wasn't available, especially for Europeans, like people from, my descent. Like, we didn't eat anything with a carb basically for 5 or 6 months because it was too cold. That didn't exist. So these kind of resets kind of bring you back to that stasis level that humans lived in for a really long time. And, people drop tons of weight with both of those tools. But again, I say tools because they're not meant to be used forever. You don't need to be in ketosis or intermittent fast forever. But throughout the training, it'll allow you to understand what those things actually mean. So you can tell Aunt Karen that the ketogenic diet won't kill you, like it's not going to give you heart disease. And then after the 8 weeks or so, you can do whatever you want. You can transition back into eating just whole food. You can continue down that ketosis route if it feels good. And then to finish off the program, we go through just kind of more tips to help you live a fully actualized human life.
So, are you spending time with the person daily, like for a little bit of time, or a certain amount of days a week? What's the kind of time?
Yeah. So we meet every other week for an hour, and then every other week from that for 30 minutes. So every 2 weeks, an hour, but basically every week we'll meet, and that's remotely or in person if you're in my area. I love the in person. That's a lot more personal. I can look you in the eyes and see if you're telling me the truth about what you're eating and stuff like that. But yeah, so meeting in person obviously is the best, but remotely works too. It definitely works. And then you have full access to me to any day, ask questions via text or email. If something's confusing or you need a recipe idea or this workout didn't work for you because of a scaling situation where you don't have, anything that you have as far as questions, you have full access.
2 things I want to ask. One is I can see if you're telling the truth. So there is a tendency for people that are addicted to anything, but sugar being what we're talking about, and certain foods,
right,
not telling you the truth about what they're doing. It's like, well, it's not going to hurt for me to have a chocolate chip cookie, and then they wind up having 3 because it gets triggered, and they, maybe have a bag.
Yeah.
And so people are not telling the truth sometimes. I'm sure that's part of it. And then the other piece of it is how do you deal with the emotional part of eating? Because I know that there is an emotional component. There's even a name, comfort food.
Right. So again, like dogma is not cool. I try and shun it as much as I can. If you eat that chocolate chip cookie, we work on not tying that to guilt. That's a really big part of it. You just eat the chocolate chip cookie, But if you're putting in the work and doing the work and you eat that chocolate chip cookie, because you've kind of changed your metabolic system, you're not going to feel good after that chocolate cookie. And then, I mean, like you might not feel good regularly, but you're really not going to feel good if you haven't had that amount of sugar in even a couple weeks. So
Yeah, that's true.
that definitely will come up, and then we'll talk about that. But you have to kind of want it, and you might have to deal with those other things first. The diet could be coming up because of some trauma that you've dealt with in your life. And, I am not a psychologist. I have some tips and tricks that could help, but for people that really, really struggle, they should definitely do some self-work or see a professional about kind of traumas they might be dealing with first. And then once you've, labeled those things and understand how to work through them, the diet will definitely help you work through them because you're not so reactive based on metabolism. So mental health is huge. Mental health can be affected by diet. I mean, not can be, it most certainly is affected by diet, but they kind of need to work together, and I have some tools, but people dealing with real trauma, it's going to be really difficult for them, if that answers your question.
It does. Because, I have a couple people in mind that I know that are just, they want to change their eating habits and their health, but they're just not ready.
Something's going to break. That rock bottom's going to hit, and then it's time. It's time to call that coach or I mean, what I like to do is plant seeds because those help. The more I talk about it in my communities, especially on job sites and stuff, like they see what I eat, I just become, a good, a positive influence, and that tends to work really well without, coming out and telling people what to do. Like just kind of planting seeds, and someone who is ready for this, I would just recommend that they put the pressure off of themselves, put that aside, and just start reading. Start trying to figure out what any of it even means without tying any emotion to like having to do this now, or if I don't, this is going to happen. Just read about these communities of health, and whether it be plant-based or paleo or whatever, just trying to get an underlying idea of what they're even about. And then if that connects with you, you might realize like, oh, I can have red meat. I thought I couldn't. I thought it was bad for me. That was a really big stress that I had. Let's get that out of the way. Maybe I'm more likely to go down this ancestral health path because Jim told me that I couldn't do this, this, and this, but he didn't even know, So those are other things too. Like just take it slow, take it slow.
Yeah. And be kind to yourself as you're learning.
Absolutely.
Do you have things on your website that people can find to maybe start on this?
Yep. My website right now is, it's live. It's been up for a long time. I changed the URL to Healthy Tradesman. My previous company had a different name, but it's the same stuff. I have a blog that I don't use enough. I definitely use my Instagram a lot, which is healthy_tradesman. But on my website, yeah, there's a coaching section where it just gives a little blurb about what my program is, and then there's a button to just contact me. And like I said, that's how it starts. Like there's just a free consultation. We'll just chat, because one of the biggest parts is just making sure that we fit as well, just as far as communicating properly and stuff like that. So you just give me a call and we'll talk about what it all means, and I'll go over it like I did with you on the podcast and answer any fears and questions you might have. And that's how I kind of go from there. Like it's not complicated. It's one-on-one coaching right now. In the future, I might do some sort of self-study that's based on the 12 weeks for people that are timid or not sure if that they're ready for the full commitment, but they do want the information. But as for now, it's just give me a call. We'll chat and see what happens.
I was going to tell you, that sounds awesome. I think so. I recommend going to thehealthytradesman.com.
Thank you.
I was going to tell you that my wife was having trouble sleeping recently. And I don't know, she just sort of was doing some research online, and they talked about intermittent fasting. So she stopped eating at 6 p.m. and her sleep completely changed. She has a full night's sleep, because I guess if the body is working to digest food all night, you're not going to sleep that well. And it was a a remarkable transformation within, I don't know, 4 days,
Wow.
something like that.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So I think now she's stopping eating at 5 and picking up again at like 9 or 10 a.m., something like that. And doesn't feel like she's missing out. You know, a lot of people, they get in bed at night and they watch TV and they eat.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
wild.
it's like, oh, a little TV show and some popcorn and a bad night's sleep. Yeah. I was curious about, you were talking about diet and autoimmune diseases, and you mentioned fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm interested in that is that my mother had fibromyalgia.
Mhm.
And it was, it was painful. It was annoying. It was, a lot of things. I never saw it as an autoimmune disease. I didn't really even know what it was. I just thought,
Right.
well, it's like arthritis or things like that, which, how does diet exacerbate that situation or even cause it?
A lot of people in the plant-based community have trouble with this, but the research is there that a lot of these autoimmune conditions are epigenetic in nature, meaning your genetics may say that this could happen to you, but what you put in your body pulls the trigger in a lot of those cases. So fibromyalgia, for instance, there's some research to suggest that oxalate, foods high in oxalate, which is a plant molecule, it's a protective agent that plants create, can create oxalate crystals, and they're very sharp if you look at them under a magnifying glass, and that can get stuck in your cells, and that may be a cause of some of the pain, for instance, in fibromyalgia. And things that are high in oxalate are, all of the brassicas and spinach, like the leafy greens, all of those things are extremely high in oxalate. And there are people that are green smoothieing every day, raw spinach, and they're destroying their thyroid. They're getting arthritis, and they don't understand that it's from these plant foods. Just to put it very basically, like, plants have been developing alongside us for 3 billion years, and they didn't develop teeth or claws. They developed chemistry. If they don't want to get eaten by bugs or by you, they've built a defense mechanism. And that's where a lot of these autoimmune issues come into play. Like, a lot of them are inflammatory in nature, and they can be literally traced back to certain plant toxins. I mean, there's not very many. There's ways that you can prepare meat that create direct toxins. There's all kinds of epidemiology that suggests that red meat causes cancer, but that's just nonsense. I mean, those are literally food frequency questionnaire studies that don't even ask you if you worked out or smoked cigarettes. They just say red meat equals cancer. That's a whole nother tangent. But yeah, these plant toxins, they don't mess around. They definitely don't mess around. Things like lectins that are present in a lot of grain-based foods, and even the capsicum foods and nightshades like tomatoes and potatoes and peppers, those can be super damaging for people with rheumatoid arthritis. If they just literally cut out that whole family of foods, their arthritis clears up, And these plant foods in certain populations, especially because of how broken we are as a society, they just pile on and add to the damage. And a lot of autoimmune issues can be exacerbated by some of these plant toxins.
I just learned something, which I'm happy about.
Yeah, that rabbit hole goes so deep, though.
Yeah, I'm sure it seems, like it's can get a little complicated, which leads me to this question, which is, how does someone know if what they're eating is helping them or hindering them? Particularly because you say, oh, spinach. I mean, I just assume that's good for you. Popeye ate it. He was beating people up left and right.
Yeah, Popeye ate spinach, but our Native American ancestors from whatever culture, they definitely didn't eat spinach. Or if they did, they knew how to cook it or prepare it in a way to get rid of those oxalates. If you look at any traditional culture, they are not eating raw produce, period. They literally do not, unless it's fruit, any vegetable that they have or find, they prepare it in a way to get rid of those plant toxins. So that's definitely a thing. But to answer your question about what to do about it, you could go the plant-based route and do it a clean way, which would eliminate a lot of the sugar and the seed oil, and you might feel better. That might be causing some inflammation that could exacerbate your autoimmune condition. But one of the most beneficial ways, which has been studied now too, is the Aip Protocol, which is autoimmune paleo. And what it does is it cuts out a lot of those offensive foods. It's basically an elimination diet. And if you do that long enough, you'll see a change. And then what you do is you slowly add back in possible triggers. And that's what tells you,
And your
you know,
body will tell you.
yeah, exactly. And if you want to take that to the farthest level, there's a guy named Dr. Paul Saladino. He is an absolute genius. He's kind of the king right now of the carnivore diet. And when people hear that, if they have any familiarity, they're like, what are you talking about? That's absolute nonsense. It's really not. That by constructing yourself an elimination diet in that realm, if you're adding in all kinds of organ meat and really high quality animal foods, you've literally cut out all possibilities of autoimmune triggers in that sense. And then you can really start to add things back in and see what may or may not be causing it. Like there's people, for instance, that like have life-threatening eczema and nothing worked until they went 100% carnivore, gone. Eczema gone, completely gone. Like, do we know the long-term ramifications of an extreme diet like that? No, we probably don't. But, you know, if you look in the record, there's a guy named Mickey Bendor. He's an anthropologist, and he claims that humans were meat and fat hunters and plant foods were a secondary survival food. They look at the trophic factor, or like they take the nitrogen out of the fossils and they realize that like we were basically facultative carnivores for a really long time of our development, just because there was an ice age and it was like, you know, plants were a fallback food when we had large ruminant mammals to eat that were full fat and protein.
It's very wide open and open to interpretation and experimentation. And if we can remove the rigidity of a dogma, as you were saying, and really use ourselves as the test tube for what works for us, and also information. I mean, that's important, and that's I think what you probably bring to the table is assurance of, you know, support of someone that would come to you. And do you have do you get a lot of people that are really overweight that come to you?
I haven't had anyone that's morbidly obese, but definitely overweight. You know, technically 70% of us in America are classified as overweight.
Do you do body fat testing or assessments or any of that?
Because it's remote, there are ways that you can do it at home and relay me that information, or there's certain places where you can go and have that tested. But that's less of a focus for me. A lot of the things that I do are inches, measurements, you know, like, and non-scale victories are huge, because there might be a woman or a man that thinks that they may be overweight, and then they start these protocols, they start to move better and lift more, and the scale doesn't drop, but their inches change and they feel better, you know? So we have all these things made up in our minds about what we should feel and look like, but it's really, at the end of the day, not about that number. It's about like your appearance. Like literally photos are great. If you take photos and not step on a scale and not share them with me or anyone else, just share them for yourself, you can you can see those metabolic changes, you know? So yeah, overweight is huge. Lots of people come to me that are focused completely on weight loss, but the benefit is they get to, you know, have all these amazing lifestyle changes in the process.
Now, I've noticed I don't know if this has to do with my age or diet or whatever, that I have a lot of trouble building muscle when I work out. It's just not happening like it used to when I was younger.
Right.
Is that a food issue? Is that just an aging thing? Is there supplements for that? Is it, you know, what am I kind of missing?
Without knowing for sure, there's a few things that you can definitely focus on. I know as people age, their protein requirement goes up for sure. Like you need to be eating more protein, not less, as you get older, because those are the building blocks that are required. It is a lot harder for your body to convert that into muscle as you get older. So it is kind of an age thing too, but it's also maybe the type of workouts that you're doing. A lot of things that definitely create that muscular structure, you know, like, I'm not saying this is you or not, but people think they're working hard at it. You have to work hard at it. You need to literally be putting the time in as much as possible. And if you want to talk like bone density and muscular structure, you need to be doing heavy compound movements. heavy within your skill range. Of course, you want to be sure you're safe and use a personal trainer or hire somebody. But the deadlift, the squat, the press, like those things help build the most. Like that's, if you wanted to spend time in the gym, it would be focusing on, with correct form, lifting, probably as heavy as you possibly can. And then obviously those numbers will scale up really fast once you start to get technique down and get their body used to that. But going in the gym and doing these accessory movements, those are for bodybuilders. They're going to make you maybe look a little bit better, but they're not, especially as you get older, you're not going to have as much of an effect on your body as doing, those compound complex lifts. Because when you put a bar on your back, you're not just working out your glutes and your thighs. Like there's so many different tensor muscles and ligaments in your body that are getting strengthened to hold that weight. And it all just kind of works together to build more muscle, and then sleep is super important. And then, more protein for sure.
So you like the free weights for that?
Yeah. They're just, it's simple, it's classic, it's no gimmick, and to me it represents movement in nature, which is always something that we try and go back to as best as possible.
I just started using some free weights, very light, just to start, because many years ago I injured myself. Every time I would try it, I would do something, I would overdo it. So I had this big fear of it. And now I've just got lighter stuff that I'm starting with. And I've noticed over the last 2 weeks, they're getting too light.
Right. So absolutely. Like light is super important in the beginning. And I don't mean to say that free weights don't work. They're definitely have a purpose, especially if you're not used to working out at all. Those will just kind of start to get those smaller muscles and those ligaments and joints ready for heavier weight. But yeah, if you're really talking about building muscle, you gotta do compound movements for sure.
I gotta find a trainer one of these days when I'm allowed to go out.
That whole deal.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other podcast. I really appreciate your time. And it's healthytradesman.com.
Healthytradesman.com.
Yes, Silas Johnson, a great resource if you want to get healthy, start eating better and looking better, and just being better all around. Give him a test out on the website. See what he's got there, and contact him. Free consultation. That sounds really good. So if you're debating, just do it. Just do it.
Absolutely. Come hang out. Let's just chat. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Silas. I been a real pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. This is a really fun conversation, and it's nice to get to know you and get to know your podcast.
Thank you.
A lot of good.
Thanks. I will send you a copy. If you want to put it on your website, you can. I won't say no.
Absolutely. Love it.
Yeah. That way you get the information out without having to talk again.
Again. Yeah, I enjoy it though, for sure. But yeah, I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. And have a wonderful day. I appreciate it. I'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you. You too. Aloha.
Aloha. I'm not in Hawaii. It's just a virtual background.
No, I am, but I love your background.
Are you in Hawaii?
Yeah, I live in Hawaii.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah.
You're just like in front of you look like you're in front of some kind of a building or something there.
I'm in my room.
Oh, you're in a room. Okay. So you're in Hawaii and I'm pretending.
Yeah. Well, whatever.
The audience has no idea what we're talking about because it's all audio. All right. Well, thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Well, folks, thank you for listening in to The Exploding Human. Please visit my website, theexplodinghuman.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. And don't forget to check out Hero Soap Company. Type in exploding at the end when you check out with their fantastic healthy soaps, and you will get a discount. Part of the profits of that company goes to helping support homeless veterans. Well, that is the end of this episode, and much appreciation for all you folks who've been regularly listening. That means a lot to me, and please keep coming back. Thank you so much. Have a great day.